White Sox fans, welcome into the Sox on Tap post-game show. It's Johnny Nani here, alongside NWI Steve, coming to you after a rare Sox win. Crack them. I'll have a victory beer to that, Steve. These are rare. I'm going to enjoy it.
Hey, yo, Jonathan. It is rare stuff to see these days. I'm still looking to get confirmation on if it is legal for the White Sox to score more runs than the opposition after 27th out has been recorded. Working to confirm.
Yeah, we will work to confirm that throughout this show. But yeah, we're coming to you from, like I said, after a rare White Sox win. White Sox salvaged the series finale in Kansas City, a 6-4 win tonight. Snaps a 5-game losing streak that, they were stumbling into September. That's the title of this episode, Steve. We've got plenty of topics to discuss. Unfortunately, this win will only be a small fraction of it here at the beginning. But hey, something that we were talking about pre-show. I just wanted to get it out there since we're on the topic of the win. I don't care how bad they are. They could be fucking 0 and whatever to this point of the season. It's still fun to watch the ball leave the yard, and it happened 3 times in each of the last 2 games. So I'll have a nice cold frosty sip of this brew.
The White Sox deployed the multi-home run strategy. I have long said that the 1% of teams in the major league should not be the only teams deploying the multi-home run strategy. I would like to see the White Sox do it more frequently.
Yeah, I would too. It's fun. Home runs are just fun. It's fun to watch the crack of the bat. You get some calls. I loved Benetti saying that Yohan greeted the Royals reliever with cannon fire today. I love hearing that kind of shit. And speaking of that guy, Yohan Moncada's homered now in back-to-back games. You had a little theory here. Let's talk Yohan Moncada real quick since
we're gonna go tinfoil hat time
early.
Right out of the shoot here. We're going bright and early here.
Going into the last year of his deal. We all know he's going to be back playing third base for this team next year. $24 million option. They're not going to be able to get rid of him. But he's going to come out of the gates hot next year knowing that he's playing for some more money and playing to potentially get traded before the deadline next year. So I think that first half of next season, we might get some of the best Yohan Moncada that we've gotten in a White Sox uniform, especially since 2019. So that's my little tinfoil hat theory.
Yeah, that's a good one there. I think our guy Sox Insane chimed in and he said he's going to be a great trade deadline pickup for someone in the middle of next season. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see exactly how that plays out. But if your tinfoil hat theory comes true, it very well could be the case.
And boy, I'm sure that would just make the natives on White Sox Twitter or White Sox X, whatever we're calling it these days, I'm sure that would just make people very happy because they have lots of glowing commentary to throw towards Yohan Moncada already at this point. I'm sure that will only help the cause.
Yeah, right. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Obviously, there's been the back issue that's plagued him. So who knows, what an offseason will do with that. And then the contract situation, like you mentioned. So let's see what happens with Yohan Moncada. I want to talk about another guy that left the yard too, again, and that was Andrew Vaughn. This guy's caught a lot of flack, and I know he's not where you want for a 3rd overall draft pick. However, the power here, like I said, it's always fun to see home runs, and Andrew Vaughn now is up. It is, past his career high now. It was 17 previously. Tonight's dinger put him at 19. He's likely, with what's left of the schedule here, you play into the first weekend of October, he's probably going to amass the 20 home run mark here. Like I said, you'd like to see more of that, but at the same time, he's another guy who's likely going to be around next year. So I'd rather see him play well than just fizzle out.
Yeah, it's kind of a frustrating situation. Obviously, we all expected a lot more from Andrew Vaughn. Especially by this point in his career. I think some of the issues that have plagued him from a developmental standpoint are outside of his control. That's more so on the previous administration that, let's be honest, they royally fucked him by not going out and getting an actual DH for this team in the 2021 season and bringing him up straight from Winston-Salem. And that's something that he's obviously never really recovered from. It would be nice to see him finish the year on a little bit of a heater, continue hitting the ball out of the ballpark. And all I know is, as bad as things are for him, at least he's got more than 13 homers and an OPS above 652. I can't imagine worshiping a first baseman with those kinds of numbers.
There was some incredible comedic timing because there's been that kind of back and forth between you and some other residents of the White Sox Twitter X machine, back and forth regarding Trader Jose, and his production to this point in the season versus Andrew Vaughn's, right? And Mr. Trader went deep in grand fashion for the Houston Astros, who are just on a tear right now, just destroying the Texas Rangers. And it was a grand slam. So that brought the RBI total up. But then, was it maybe 5 minutes later, Andrew Vaughn takes that pitch down the left field line. Guess what? Runner on second. So he goes back ahead in the RBI column as well. And then all those other numbers like you mentioned there. So yeah, Andrew Vaughn doing better than the former White Sox first baseman.
Yeah, I mean, hashtag, Trader Jose. People want to get very lippy on the Twitter machine whenever he has his, one extra base hit out of every, 6 games that he plays here in the year of our Lord 2023, because apparently we still have to just think about it as if it's 2019 Jose Abreu. The 2023 numbers, he's just getting acclimated to his new environment. Never mind the fact that we're in September. Fucking losers.
I had to bring it up. And like I said, I think it was just incredible comedic timing. So I had a little fun with the Vaughn Gone Summer gift from Sox on Tap. So other than that, you've got White Sox. They tried their best to give it up. They put tank commander Aaron Bummer in tonight. He did give up a 2-run shot after walking a leadoff man. But Sleepy Santos came in, was able to relieve that inning. And the workhorse, Brian Shaw, shutting it down. Our guy Tony texted me and he said, I think Brian Shaw's my new, big Brian Shaw guy now. He's my new Ross Detweiler. I think he's falling into that category here as he closes this game out.
I mean, Brian Shaw is contractually obligated to pitch in all games that are played on days that end in Y. So this is what has to happen. It's written into the contract. It's a bylaw at this point. Mr. Clean has no choice but to abide by the letter of that contract.
Right. Yeah. Seriously, it feels like he does pitch every game. And I think it's hilarious because at this point, you and I talked about shows past, I think it was back into even end of July, right? And we were talking about, this is a comedy at this point. We're past the tragedy stage. I mean, it still is tragic, but if you're going to at least still tune into this game like we did tonight and have been for the past, couple of months here, you got to find some comedy in it. And I think this is just one of the best comedic bits. So we're going to ride it until the end of the season.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. Our guy Southside Ron says Brian Shaw '90 Saturday Bender jersey territory. That might have to be a DH Gate purchase. We'll have to see about that one. That may work its way into the mix. That'd be hilarious. All right, Steve. Obviously, the White Sox they win tonight to end this 5-game losing streak that had started. First win in the Chris Getz era here. But this is what I was, alluding to the title of our episode in stumbling into September. It's been mostly lifeless, just brutal baseball. You get balked off on Tuesday night, and you got swept at home by the Detroit Tigers and the whole Miggy farewell tour, which we booed, by the way. We booed, #confirmed. It's been bad ever since this. And I know the GM just changing that doesn't, reflect the output on the field, but people are still going to make those comments because nobody's too happy with the hire at GM there. So Steve, while we get a win tonight, things are just still rolling downhill for this team. And a lot of it is falling on the shoulders of the manager who will reportedly be back next year, Pedro Grifol. Let's talk about Mr. Clean.
Where to begin on this topic? I think one of the most troubling aspects of that disastrous press conference that took place 6 days ago, when Chris Getz was introduced as the new GM of this team, was him coming out unequivocally and saying that Mr. Clean will be back in the dugout for the 2024 season. Since that comment came out, this team they get swept at home by the Detroit Tigers. They lose 2 embarrassing games in Kansas City to the Royals. They look like they have just completely tuned him out at this point. You and I were talking about this before we hopped on here. Some of Ozzy's comments on the postgame show, just saying that this looks like a guy that the players in that clubhouse don't respect. And it's hard to argue that at this point. He's in over his skis from an in-game perspective, and the effort is just absolute dog shit. What was one of the things that he talked about all the time in Glendale when we were clamoring for him to hashtag set the tone this spring? It was about, we're going to go out there, we're going to work, we're going to compete, we're going to put forth the effort. If that's not there, and let's be real about this, this isn't just a September issue. This has been an issue probably since late April, early May, when they had that 10-game losing streak. Since then, there have been very few instances when you can really look at this team and feel good about what they're putting in from an effort standpoint on a day in and day out basis. And that's a direct reflection on him. And I think a direct reflection on the fact that the guys in that clubhouse, the ones that are still there and the ones that aren't there, they don't respect this fucking bozo.
Right. Yeah. I think that's, it's a comment. Ozzy is on the post-game show for NBC Sports Chicago. So you could probably make a post about anything that he says on any given night. Right. Because they're, like we are here sifting through, what is the kind of downfall of this White Sox season and trying to identify problems and come up with ways to talk about it. However, it is pretty evident. I've seen the take out there multiple times that, if this, this looks very much like a team trying to get this guy fired or get him out and not have him there. And it makes Ozzy's comments right there seem a lot more realistic. And once again, I've said it 100 times, I'll say it 100 more. Wish I could be a fly on the wall in the clubhouse to know what's really going on. Get the hashtag source information. We don't have that luxury. However, the actions do speak pretty loudly. And the actions have been poorly played baseball, not fundamental. Low effort, like you had said. Staples of what he said he was going to implement here, and it just has never come to fruition. And I would agree with you that I think he's way in over his head in this position.
So you feel as though that culture that he was talking about building not going so well right now?
Just bad. Okay.
it's real bad. I don't know how Chris Getz can look at this thing again, unless maybe this is a directive from he who shall remain nameless that we're sticking with Pedro for at least another year because I don't want to have to pay for two managers.
Right.
Maybe that's the situation. And so he had to come out and publicly say it. But if he was given the autonomy to make that decision, to be the lead decision maker within the organization, and to just come out and say that at this point, that is strike number one when it comes to the judgment and the evaluation of Chris Getz in his role as general manager right there. Because how anybody can look at this situation and think that this is a guy that you go into next season with is really beyond me.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for Chris Getz, and I'm not trying to defend him, but if that is a directive from up top, like you had mentioned there, nobody else has to wear it but him, right? And I think that's kind of unfortunate for him because he's already getting all the flack in the world for being an internal hire and just more of the same operated under the previous regime and just, internal promotion without experience.
He's different, Johnny. He's different.
Right. I know, it says all of that, but, if you truly were, we just talked about action speaking louder than words. Well, in action would be to go and find someone more qualified in that position. If you really are. And that's the other thing too. They've said that we're serious about, competing in 2024 and writing this thing as quickly as possible. And I don't think Pedro is a guy to man that ship at the top once again. It just doesn't inspire any confidence at all, Steve.
I don't know that I would have any confidence in Pedro's ability to manage a lemonade stand, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Let alone a Major League Baseball team.
Yeah. Yep. I'm right there with you, man. It's, it's tough. It's having to listen to him game after game and all the kind of word vomit that comes out. I think culture, luckily, I don't think we've heard that from him in a little bit here, but we did hear it last week in that press conference that we're not even a week off of here from Chris Getz at the top. And, when I hear Chris Getz say, oh, well, I need to, sit down and talk with Pedro. I think he said that, Tony and I kind of clowned that too. I saw Beefloaf had a good meme. I need to talk with Pedro. I need to meet with Pedro. That's definitely become a meme among White Sox fans. But when you think about like what that really entails, the conversation that I would have had been, okay, you get the feedback on the players, what you saw in the shirt. That's like standard exit interview thing. But then you also need to evaluate him too, right? It's not we're sitting here in conjunction making these decisions here. It's okay, I'll get your input and then we'll get back to you in a couple of days after we digest all of that. And if it was digested properly, you would think that they would move in a different direction. But that's just me.
I mean, that would be far too logical for this organization if we're being honest with ourselves.
Right. Yeah, that's true. All right. We've got a bevy of topics on the docket here. We appreciate everyone jumping in. Make sure you're subscribed on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. Jump in the comment section like our guy Ron here. Oh, yeah. He says, does Pedro Grifol stretch out undershirts like the real Mr. Clean does, Steve?
Wow. That's a tremendous question right there. I've not, I don't think any of us have seen Pedro Grifol in the weight room to make that kind of accurate determination yet.
He's no Gabe Kapler.
Well, I mean, listen, there's only one. I mean, let's be real about that. So you know what? We'll have to work to confirm on that.
Yeah, we'll have to work. All right, we got to get on to our next topics here. Let's talk about another one. Korey Lee, guy that's been kind of a name bantied about a little bit here because he's been getting the bulk of the playing time behind the plate, which many had clamored for, and I'm glad that we are seeing it because you do at this point in the season need to bring these guys up, see what they can offer. Trade deadline acquisition obviously was sitting at AAA, partially because of an injury, so I think he might have been up earlier if that wasn't the case. Nevertheless, been a struggle at the plate for him. Hasn't been extremely smooth sailing, I would say, behind the plate. But he did put together a nice game on Tuesday night, and that led one color commentator of this team to anoint him a strong 50% piece up the middle, saying that you need to be strong up the middle to build a solid core. And Robert, I think that's a given. Everyone can agree on that. But then he added Korey Lee in that after this one game. Steve, I'm not convinced. We sat there and we watched Friday night, him behind the plate, and I wasn't all that impressed. Not that the pitchers give him all that much time, but it's not like he's got an amazing pop time. Besides the game yesterday, it's been a really rough go at the plate, like a 1 for 23 stretch, something like that. Previously, finally did hit his first big league home run. But I'm sorry, we can't be anointing guys after one good game here. That's just where my thoughts stand initially. Yours on Korey Lee.
Well, said color commentator talked about building, a foundation for your baseball team up the middle. And that is true. If you go and if you look historically, teams that are competitive, teams that are world champions, very strong up the middle defensively. That's true right there. But this is the same guy whose construction company said it would take, 5 years to build a house. And, that house was made with some really shoddy materials and has come crumbling down in about a year and a half. So I'm not necessarily sure I want to trust his the foundation that he's trying to lay up the middle for the 2024 White Sox and beyond with Korey Lee behind the plate. It has been, to your point there, really bad offensively. Obviously he hits the home run yesterday, but even just the quality of the plate appearances. Okay, maybe that might be a little bit of a stretch right there because he's actually taken some pitches and he doesn't just go out there flailing at everything the way like a Lenine Sosa does. So they're not okay. I was a little harsh there in talking about the quality of the plate appearances, but the results haven't been good.
It's not like he's really striking the ball for hard outs.
Right. We have this conversation all the time that there's a fine line between process and results. The process can be good and the results can still be shit because at the end of the day, you don't have the ability to implement that process for success. And that could very well be the case here with Korey Lee. I mean, there's a reason why he wasn't really factoring into the plans for the Houston Astros. There's a reason why
we're going to need to move on from Martin Maldonado at some point, right?
Yeah. And if they didn't see this guy as someone that could reasonably fit into their actual culture. They're an organization that actually has a culture, one of success. And if he couldn't fit into that, I think that says quite a bit right there. And the defensive side of it, I think there are some positive things that can be gleaned from it a little bit here.
I think he's thrown out 4 runners.
Yeah. But, offensively, aside from the fact that he just doesn't swing at every pitch that is thrown 60 feet, 6 inches, there's a lot to be desired there in the batter's box from Korey Lee. So to say that he's, part of this catching plan going forward, that's very presumptuous in my opinion.
Right. I will say that I do think that at least in a stopgap measure, that's a fair assumption to think that he will be part of that mix in 2024. Edgar Caro, I would imagine, is probably still some time off, given his age and where he's at in his development. Maybe you see him later in the season next year, but I think that's really what you're looking forward to behind the plate. My thing is, though, just with kind of Mr. Color Commentator's comments on this, can we just face the fact that he might just be an a high, slightly above quad A level player? It's like that, some guys are just like that, and he may just be one of those. And that's where I go with maybe just a stopgap option here. Maybe just an option that, does get a bulk right now early on in the next season. But then when the real deal, more so as we think should be the case with Edgar Caro, comes up, Korey Lee will take a back seat to that. And like I said, I wouldn't be anointing him a full-fledged member of this team up the middle for the years to come. I know he's got a job to do. He's got bosses that oversee him on that, talking about Mr. Color Commentator. But I just, some guys just aren't that good. We're coming to that realization possibly about Andrew Vaughn here, right? A 3rd overall draft pick. Like, all right, this is a guy who was, you talked about coming over from the Astros and not fitting in their culture. That's one thing. But he was also not one of their top prospects there. And when he comes over here after this reshuffle, even was the 18th ranked prospect in the White Sox system. So it's not like he is and the White Sox system is still down in the 20s. So it's not like he's a world beater. That's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah. And I think maybe a reasonable comp for him, he might be Sebi Zavala 2.0. When Sebi came up initially, the at-bats were really bad that first go around. And then he was kind of on that shuttle back and forth between Chicago and Charlotte. That's kind of what can happen a lot of times with catchers. That's a position that you see that a lot just because of the scarcity of that position overall. So if there is a guy that organizations feel can handle things at least defensively, they will be given a little bit more rope from an offensive standpoint before they are cut entirely out of the organization. So he could very well be on that Sebi Zavala plan where he is just shuttling back and forth between Chicago and Charlotte here. And if he can't make any kind of meaningful offensive adjustments to be someone that you can consistently have on a 26-man roster, that might be all he is. And that's just, like you said, that's part of the game. Sometimes that just happens.
Right. I think the opportunities will be there for him because of that name that you had also mentioned in that same breath, Sebi Zavala, designated for assignment and reportedly claimed off of waivers by the Diamondbacks today. So Sebi, I think we can all thank him for his service drawing that walk to set up the Tim Anderson walk-off home run in the Field of Dreams. Were you there?
John, I was there, and if I recall correctly, and I think I do, I think I may have predicted something about him getting on base so Timmy could walk it off.
Wow. Yeah. That's honestly, I think he had, blasts of home runs, right? He had like a 3 home run game for, his first 3 home runs all came in the same game back in 2021. He had another one earlier this summer through the haze and fog at Yankee Stadium, a multi-home run game. But other than that, Sebi Zavala was just a decent backup catcher, provided some nice defensive metrics last year, but even that kind of dropped off this year. So they made their decision. Some people clamoring for Yaz to be the guy to be DFA'd, but they made their decision. I think this clears the path for Korey Lee going forward. So it will leave that as it is for the catcher position. Let's move on to the mound and talk about Michael Kopech, because it's not hashtag confirmed yet, but what many of us had bandied about here on these shows and on the X Machine, that he may be destined for the bullpen, because the White Sox Saturday spot in the rotation is TBA. As of now, Grifol Mr. Clean didn't fully get into it, but that's what it's looking like at the time being. Steve, reaction to this?
My initial reaction, not so much about the fact that it's TBA for Saturday, but we're just a few days removed from them coming out and publicly stating that there's not been any discussions about moving Michael Kopech.
Just like a little over a week ago, maybe?
Yeah. So to backpedal on it that quickly, that's pretty fascinating to me. And thinking about something we kind of opened the show with, the discussion about Pedro Grifol and his status with the organization. If you can backpedal that quickly about Michael Kopech and his long-term future with this team and his role, you should be able to backpedal on the managerial status of Pedro Grifol. Hopefully that is something that we will see reevaluated at the end of the season. I fully expect him to be the manager in 2024, but for the love of God, to just anoint him as that is egregious. Circling back to Michael Kopech now.
Yeah.
I've talked about this a number of times. For a lot of people that are wanting him to be shifted back to the bullpen, because he did have a modicum of success there during that 2021 season, my concern is this. He's not throwing strikes now. His walk rate has exponentially gone up since the second half of the 2021 season. The one thing you can't afford to have happen with relievers is to be coming in and issuing free passes with consistency. If Michael Kopech is going to continue to be a guy that is 5 or 6 walks per 9, that problem only gets exacerbated when you shift him to the bullpen and when you are coming into situations in tight games, unless he is just going to be that low leverage bulk guy when you're in blowouts, at which point then it doesn't matter as much. Still super annoying. But if you're going to try to put him into any kind of positions of leverage, you need guys coming in there throwing fucking strikes. And he has not shown an ability to be able to do that at all this season. And again, that walk rate has been increasing steadily since the second half of 2021. And that's a real problem here.
I've drawn at least 4 or 5 walks off of Michael Kopech just from watching some of his games, usually on a lazy Sunday start when I'm reeling from Saturday night and just watching I could stand up there in that box and take those 5 pitches and draw the walk there. I do want to ask this question though, because I think it's a legitimate factor that plays into this. Michael Kopech, prior to the All-Star break, had an IL stint that they dubbed shoulder inflammation, basically dead arm, as I think many of us have speculated, and it looked that way, right, as he was wearing down. Not nearly as effective, because all those issues that you mentioned have really come to life as of late, talking since the end of June through now. But there were a few starts within the May range, I'd say end of April, May range, that were acceptable, and actually, to be quite frank with you, at times downright dominant. Granted, still some walk issues popping up there, but as that arm wears down there, could this potential move be a factor of that? The arm fatigue, the not having the endurance to go a full season in the rotation.
It could very well be the case. One of the biggest issues with Michael Kopech, and I feel like this has been talked about a lot, is he just doesn't have that innings base built up. When you consider the fact that he missed 2 full seasons, with 2019 to Tommy John, and then the 2020 COVID season, and then shifting into the bullpen, when he threw it was 65 innings that year, there's just not enough volume there. So, now you get to a point where I think he might have surpassed his innings total from last season already. I don't have the numbers directly in front of me here. If he hasn't, he's already approaching that. But he just hasn't built up enough of an innings base to be reasonably counted on. And that's a real problem for a guy that was looked upon and was expected to be a front or at worst a middle of the rotation guy. And if you can't even count on him for that at this point, if we want to talk real here for a second, you could make a very valid case that Michael Kopech is a non-tender guy this winter. Now, given the problems that they have from a pitching standpoint, and knowing that right now the only guy that you can reasonably count on in the 2024 starting rotation is Dylan Cease, that muddies the waters a little bit. But by performance here at this point, things are going in the wrong direction. The salary is increasing through arbitration. You could make a very compelling case that Michael Kopech is someone that should be non-tendered this winter for a team that had more depth, had any semblance of depth, I should say, on their pitching staff.
Right. I mean, they non-tendered Carlos Rodon, right? And I know everybody was up in arms about, that sort of situation, but looking at past, track record of starters or just pitchers in general with some injury history there. It's an interesting point that you bring up. Let's see how that plays out this winter. But, I don't know. I don't have the answer in front of me. I don't have a crystal ball, but I just have an inkling. I agree that the walks could be an issue, but just from that arm fatigue sort of load management of sorts, I have a feeling that the move to the bullpen, what many have kind of forecasted, may be just the best for him as a pitcher to get the desired results out of him. While it's not ideal, you said, a major piece in that trade coming over to kickstart the rebuild. It's sad that he couldn't even stick in the rotation, even as the bottom of the rotation guy. But this is a reality that we're presented with here, and he's just not getting the job done as a starter. So that is what it is. Once again, no official ruling, not hashtag confirmed yet. We'll see what happens as they come back. Got an off day Thursday. I would assume before Friday's series opener, we'll have a little bit more clarity on what's going on with the White Sox rotation this weekend. So I want to get into another pitcher here real quick. He's heading out on a rehab assignment. Again, that's one Mr. Garrett Crochet. We haven't seen him since mid-June. He did try to start a rehab assignment at the end of June into early July. That was shut down with the shoulder inflammation coming up. It's already been shortened coming back from the Tommy John here. Garrett Crochet maybe ramping up, getting a few innings here at the end. This is a guy that has said, it's got a very lofty goal, but he has said that he wants a chance to get into the White Sox rotation in 2024. I don't see that happening, but Garrett Crochet coming back. Thoughts on this?
He's pretty much in the same boat as Michael Kopech. There's a lack of volume there from a guy that had to be rushed to the major leagues to help, for a pennant chase, and then, pitches out of the bullpen the entirety of the 2021 season, and then blows his elbow out in late March of 2022. So very similar to Michael Kopech in that he just doesn't have the workload there that is going to be needed to be a viable major league starter at this point. I can't, for the life of me, and I hope he would prove me wrong, but I just find it very hard to believe that a guy that, has he even thrown 50 innings in a season at the major league level before? I don't think he has. So to then expect him to get thrust into the starting rotation, would you be able to get 100 innings out of him next year? You're almost in a spot where you might have to think about doing a piggyback with Kopech and Crochet there. That might have to be, one of the pieces of your 5-man rotation, so to speak, in 2024. And that's not, necessarily something I have a tremendous amount of confidence in the White Sox being able to do effectively.
Can we just think about that situation? While things have tumbled to this point to where that, like you'd said, it might actually be, thinking about it in theory, an option not on the table. But can we just look at that? A guy that you had gotten back as a major piece along with Yohan Moncada, kickstart the rebuild when I was talking about Kopech. And then your first overall draft pick. I know that year was wonky with COVID and everything, but still, he was your first round draft pick. Were they 11th that year? I want to say in that 2020 draft, Garrett Crochet, 11th draft pick, and you rushed him through into the majors because you wanted him throwing 104, 105 at the end of 2020. Like you said, pennant chase there. So decisions were made in the past. However, those two having to combine to be a starter at this point when you thought a rotation at this point could maybe feature both of them. It's very sad.
It's just it's not speaking very highly for the development plan for the White Sox organization.
Well, good thing that guy didn't get hired or anything.
Yeah, no. Good thing he didn't get a promotion. No, God, no. He certainly would not deserve that. No reasonable, well-run organization would give someone like that a promotion.
Ugh.
I hate it here.
That's where we are, though. I just wanted to take a step back and fully ingest what the reality of that situation there is. So we'll see if Garrett Crochet comes back. I really hope the shoulder is feeling better because, that was some fatigue coming back. His start was delayed this year anyway with the Tommy John recovery and then just 10 innings, 10 outings. And it's been on the shelf, like I said, since mid-June. So we shall see. Stay tuned on tapsportsnet.com. We'll have all your updates there. You can go read about the Crochet rehab assignment there. I wrote up a little post about it as the game was getting underway tonight. So, Steve, we're winding down here on Sox on Tap. Final thoughts before we close down.
Really brutal series in Barbecue City there. Obviously, the game Monday, just, they took Labor Day off too.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And then classic White Sox performance in Kansas City. You blow a 6-0 lead last night. Thankfully, I didn't see a single pitch of it. So I just had to see, kind of what transpired later on in the evening there.
Got balked off. You got balked off. That's...
it's funny. I was actually at a game on July 4th, 2011, when the Sox balked off the Royals.
All right. Yeah. Yep.
So they turned the tables on them this time. And I actually saw AJ joking about it on twitter.com here this morning because AJ was the guy that scored the winning run that day. And he was joking around saying that his speed kind of put the fear of God, so to speak, in the Royals and caused that balk.
Yeah. That's a good one. As you gave your tinfoil hat time. I don't know if this will make a whole lot of sense, but I'm just kind of scheming it up in my head when you're talking about the Sox Royals connection. And we already know all the Sox Royals connections going on in the dugout and now up in the front office there. Was this an intentional effort on the White Sox part to make the Royals look better? So then when the Royals regime is fully installed at 35th and Shields, it's okay, well, this is the track record and these guys can, rise and beat teams like this here. And I know that it's not a tough competition here, but you're making the Royals look better on purpose. So when you do look more like the Royals yourselves, you look better.
So you're saying it's a hashtag inside job?
I think it might be an inside job. I mean, look at all the connections.
I mean, there's a lot of dots that can be connected here. So, we talk tinfoil hat time all the time. This is not that far-fetched.
And this is one that is now seemingly becoming a little bit more realistic because they apparently did check in on him at the trade deadline. But the Sal Perez situation, we didn't even bring his name up when discussing Korey Lee and catchers earlier this year. But in previous shows, if you go back in the Sox on Tap catalog, you are one that has mentioned that as a forewarning ahead of time. And I will just say, you've been right about some things in the past.
I am terrified of this very notion, and I just hope that this does not happen because the idea of this team bringing on Sal Perez, and I think he's owed $23 million for the next 2 seasons, and I find it very hard to believe that
might be the sticking point. But
in a circumstance like that, you can always get the Royals to take on more of the money if you give them like Brian Ramos or,
Right.
some other prospect that, a team might actually value. That would be just so White Sox.
Yeah, right. All right. Last question here from the YouTube section. We appreciate everyone there. Make sure you're subscribed on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube so your comments can show up just like this. We got a question, Steve, about your favorite other team here. Who wins more games the rest of the year, the Bears or the White Sox?
If the Bears do the right thing and install Tyson Bagent as QB1, I will definitely say the Bears on that one. I can't, reasonably expect a team that is, trotting out a running back at the quarterback position to start the year to win more than 2-3 games. So, if they do the right thing and actually put a real quarterback under center there, I would think the answer would be the Bears.
All right. I'm going to go with the White Sox solely because Jesse, we need to cook. He's going to get at least 3 more starts here towards the end. And Tukey, you saw him. Hey, that's one thing we overpassed tonight. Quality start for Tukey. I know it's been a rough go a little bit as of late, but there were some starts early on that made you go, ooh, with the stuff. Command wasn't there, but hey, quality start tonight. I know it's against the Royals, who you're trying to emulate and be. But at the same time, those guys combining, I will put that just over the opportunities that the Bears will have based on bulk of games. White Sox got that going in their favor. Sox will win more games than the Bears rest of the way. All right, that'll do it for us here on Sox on Tap. Great show tonight. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Once again, on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. Subscribe over there so you can jump in the comment section. And as always, check out ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. Find us on the socials at Sox on Tap, at OnTap Sportsnet. Until next time, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.